Hi, friend. Today's guest is the plant-based legend, Rip Esselstyn. If you think you know a lot about him, well, you probably do. But we dig into some really fun stuff that you might not know about him, so stay tuned for that. And speaking of plants, if you're interested in adding more plant based meals to your life, head over to my website, wellelephant.com, after the show to download my free cookbook with recipes like queso, sloppy joes, lasagna, and cupcakes. And if you're really ready to reverse disease like I did, check out my online class, Ace Plant Based Eating, while you're there. I want to thank you again for listening. Helping you to be healthier in mind, body, and spirit is at the forefront of everything I do. You mean the world to me. So let's jump into today's show. Hi, friend. Are you looking to age healthfully, confidently, and vibrantly? Then this podcast is for you. Smart, slightly salty, irreverent, and thought-provoking. I'm Lauren Bernick, and this is Age Like a Badass Mother. This man needs no introduction for this audience, I imagine, but here's a very abbreviated version. Rip Esselstyn hails from the first family of plant-based royalty. I wrote this, not him, by the way. He's the author of 4 books, including 2 New York Times bestsellers. He's the host of the wildly popular Plant Strong podcast. You can find out more about his retreats and Plant Strong meal solutions at plantstrong.com. Please welcome former firefighter, professional triathlete, and 2-time Masters swimming record holder in the backstroke, my fellow Austinite, Rip Esselstyn. Hi.
Thank you, Lauren. I hope that I am aging like a badass man, just like you're aging like a badass woman.
That's right. Okay. Thank you. Yes. Your sister actually said that I should change the name of this podcast to Living Like a Badass Mother. She didn't like the aging name. So I know she's right though, too. She said if this was involving a man, there'd be no aging. It would just be living. And I was like, you have a point, Jane.
Yeah.
Speaking,
leave it to Jane to, bring that to your attention.
to rename my podcast. Tell me, I love your names. I have a daughter named Jane. I don't know if you know that, but I love that you all have zippy little names. Is that because of, your last name is Esselstyn, so your parents tried to give you quick little names, or what? Can you tell me everybody's names in their birth order?
Sure. Yeah. So I'm the oldest. Obviously, Rip.
Well, I didn't know that.
And Rip is actually it's a nickname that was given to me on about day 3 after I was born, and it's because I was born at the Esselstyn family farm in upstate New York, right across from the Catskill Mountains, and in this particular area of upstate New York is where the Washington Irving spent a lot of time and wrote about the legend of Sleepy Hollow and Rip Van Winkle. And my grandfather founded a clinic in the area called the Rip Van Winkle Clinic. And so they called me Rip, and my birth name is Richard, but I've never been called that. So
my gosh, I had no idea. We uncovered something quickly already.
Yes.
Richard.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then I have a brother who's 11 and a half months younger than I am.
Oh,
his name is Ted.
Okay.
And then obviously 2.5 years younger than me is Jane. And then 4.5 years younger than me is Zeb.
Dang, your parents are good namers. They really are. I love all of those names. Those are great. And who out of the siblings, who got in trouble the most? Who was the wicked sibling? Not wicked, but who got in trouble? Who was the instigator?
I would say that no one sibling took the crown for that. I would say that we all equally had our moments.
I just can't, I'm sure everybody kind of tells you this, but your family is such a standout, like of just what you wish your family was. And I mean, I guess you realize that, or is it just so second nature that you're like, yeah, this is just how it is?
No, I definitely feel very, very, very grateful
Yeah.
that I was born into the family that I was, with the parents that I have, with the siblings that I have. It was it was, and it has been a pretty remarkable upbringing, and the bonds. I think that the bonds that have formed between all of us, as a family, that have now extended on into our families with our children, and now my parents now have, geez, um, their great grandparents now. I think they have 9 or 10 grandchildren. It's a really remarkable family unit.
Yeah, it is. I love the video of you guys dancing like that. You have to imitate your favorite fruit or vegetable. That's the funniest thing I've ever seen. It's so adorable. I love that. I want to do that at my next family gathering. Out of
Well,
your parents,
and that's a lot of fun, because you all of a sudden have to get very creative. Well, if an asparagus danced, what would that look like? Or
I
if
know, right?
a bunch of kale danced, what would that look like? Or if I was a grape, like, how would a grape dance? And so
Yes,
so it and it's yeah. And
it's
then
so cute.
we took turns, obviously, doing that. It was actually I think Kryle's idea, and Kryle is my sister Jane's daughter, who actually now kind of runs social media for a company called Tushy. And I don't know if you ever heard of Tushy
Tushy,
before.
I
It,
well, I feel like I have. What?
yeah.
What
Well,
is it?
it's basically like, instead of using toilet paper, to wipe your private parts, it's a little neat contraption that you put on your toilet, and it's kind of like a bidet, right?
Oh yeah, you know what? They have that at Black Swan Yoga here in Austin.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Okay,
it's
I
very,
thought I'd seen it.
yeah. So
Cool.
it's very effective, and it's very environmentally, on the up and up.
Yeah, you know what? It is. And it's so funny because I don't know why bidets never caught on here because they have them all, when you go to Europe and you're like, why don't we have this? This is so good.
Yeah, and
It is.
Japan, they're very
Yeah.
popular in Japan, but
Mhm.
I think they're making they're slowly starting to make a dent here in the United States.
Well, thanks to Cryle, they will. That's for sure.
Yes.
um, well, so what who was who was more strict disciplinarian out of your parents? Your mom or your dad?
Oh, my father.
Your father, really?
Yeah,
Oh my gosh. I
yeah.
can't even imagine. So adorable, your parents. What did you learn from watching their marriage?
Well, they have a very remarkable remarkable union. Um, they have the utmost respect and, I think, admiration for each other. It is definitely very old school, meaning, my mother very much, um, I'm not going to say defer, but she loves doting on my father, right, and
Oh,
and and, and being, the ultimate caretaker there. Um, but Anne is fierce,
oh yeah.
but they, it's remarkable how they very rarely fight or argue about anything, and that was very, in some ways, it was really um, wonderful to see. And on the other hand, it was also a little bit rough, because it's not how most relationships work,
No.
right? So it almost set up a a false sense of what, every relationship would look like. And as I went through my different relationships with women, I quickly realized that I wasn't having the same kind of um,
Why is
uh,
this not like my parents?
beautiful relationships that my parents had, for whatever reasons, right? But they were such a fantastic example and representation of what a successful marriage could look like.
Yeah. That's
As
and
and as you and I both know, it seems like I don't know what the stats are these days, but over 50% of marriages don't make it.
Yeah. I mean, it's not easy. I mean, it definitely takes a lot of compromise, but you've been married a while too. Jill is your wife, is that right?
Yep. Yeah. My wife is Jill, and we've been married since 2006. I mean, I took my time because I wanted to make sure that when I did get married, it was with the right woman, and she's been remarkable, and we get along fantastically well, and have 3 children that we couldn't be happier with. So yeah, so we've been married now almost that's almost 20 years.
Almost 20 years, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's great. And I heard from a mutual friend that you met her on a blind date. Is that right? Or is
Jill,
that
no,
wrong?
no,
No?
Jill was not a blind date. No, no,
Oh,
no,
how'd you meet
no.
her?
She started a very successful network of charter schools here in Austin called KIPP. It's an acronym for Knowledge is
Oh.
Power program. And one of my good friends was on her board of directors, and he invited me to go. This is when they were in a strip mall, and they were only serving about 24 kids. And he invited me to go and change out the fluorescent lighting there and put in a new refrigerator. And he's like, this woman is like doing really amazing things in education for underprivileged, kind of demographics. And so I was like, I'm in. And so I met her, and I was like, wow, this is a young whippersnapper. And I really like her whole energy and sense of purpose. And she's so passionate about this. And so we ended up going on a date, and yeah, and we 4 years later we got married.
just just a quick 4 years later.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's great. So, did you kind of know right away, even though you took your time, or what? You were just a little gun shy because you were trying to take it slow, or what happened there, Rip? What
No,
took so long?
no, I'm like that in life. I kind of sometimes big decisions like that. I don't usually rush into it. Um, no, I had a pretty good sense after the first date that she would probably be my wife.
Oh, really? And
Yeah,
what does she say? Did she know right away, or
she did.
she did?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. I well, I know that probably everybody who's listening knows, who your dad is, Caldwell B. Esselstyn Jr., who literally wrote the book on preventing and reversing heart disease. And I guess, were you in college when he and your mom said, "Hey, we're going whole food plant based," or
Yeah,
how
so
old were you?
I was a sophomore at the University of Texas at Austin.
All right,
It
that's
was
why
night.
you did. You come here on a swim scholarship?
I did. I did.
Came,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
and never
Uh,
left Austin like a good person.
Never left Austin. And yeah, it was 1984 when he started his research at the Cleveland Clinic and asked the cardiology department to send him their just worst off patients that had been turned down for another bypass or stent or angioplasty, and they had no recourse but basically to just go home and figure out what they wanted to do after they died. Literally, I mean, most of these patients have what's called end stage heart disease, which typically means you have less than a year to live. I mean,
Mm.
that just gives you an indication of how bad off these patients were. And so my father took them underneath his wing, and he saw them every other week for 5 years,
Wow,
right? And
wow.
made them keep a food diary, and then every other week he would see them and go over that food log. He'd do their blood pressure, weigh them in, do a lipid panel to check their cholesterol levels. And so they knew deep down that they had a man that truly cared about the direction that their heart disease was moving in. And I mean, incredibly enough, they were around 5 years later, 10 years later, 15 years later, many 20 years later. And then when they did perish, as we all do, they weren't perishing from heart disease or cancer. It was, other ailments from being, in your late 80s or 90s. So pretty remarkable that, took people that were knocking at death's door and gave them another, 15 to 20 years of a really grand life.
That's just a spectacular story. It really is. And so he told your family, okay, hey, we're going to start doing this diet. Now you were away at school, so I guess you had options. You didn't really have to do it. But
Yeah.
did you? And what was
Well,
that
so that,
beginning
yeah,
like?
yeah. So interestingly enough, so I was eating at the athletic uh, dining hall, and I was there with the basketball players, the football players, swimmers, some of the golfers, some of the tennis players. And it was steak and eggs and soft serve ice cream, chicken fried steak. I mean, it was,
Oh God.
at the time it was like, wow, this is fantastic, but it was not healthy, right? But so it was 1984 when my father started this, but I would come home for Christmas break, for Thanksgiving, for the summers, part of the summers. And so I got exposed to this over a period of about 2 years before I graduated when I was home, but I didn't embrace it when I was a student at University of Texas because I was eating at a location that wasn't serving that kind of food.
Yeah,
Right,
nobody
right.
was serving that kind of food back
Yeah,
then.
no, that's true. But as soon as I graduated, I immediately started, buying my own food, making my own food. And so that's when I started, full kale going in this direction was uh, really January of 1987.
But what was your buy-in? Like, what did you just say, "Oh, I really like this food. I feel better when I'm home." Like, why did you buy into it? Because you
Oh,
certainly didn't have to.
no, but you know what? It's a great question because there's a number of reasons. Number one, my grandfather had his first heart attack at the age of 42. And then he ended up dying at the tender age of 72 from a
Mm.
combination of prostate cancer and type 2 diabetes.
Was that Ann's dad or your dad's
That's
dad?
my dad's dad,
Oh, wow.
right? Um, and so, and then I had this my sophomore year at UT. The whole swim team had their a lipid panel done, and my total cholesterol was about 210, and my LDL was about 130. And my father was starting to do research, and the ideal numbers back then were try to get that total cholesterol under 150, that LDL closer to under 80. And so even though I was still very young, 20, 21, I wasn't so arrogant to think that I was immune from heart disease.
Hmm.
So, and then it also just so happens that, I was trying to figure out what my next move was going to be after graduating from college. And that's when I decided that, you know what, I do not want to sit behind a desk. I love athleticism. I love the fact that it is very black and white. Like whoever crosses the finish line first, right? You're the winner, and it's based on a time, and you're racing against other people. So that's what I did for the next 10 years. And it just so happened that the number one triathlete on the planet at the time, Dave Scott, was a hardcore vegetarian. Yeah.
Wow.
So, for health and performance reasons, I started eating that way in 1987 and have never looked back.
That just seems like it would have been so difficult to kind of adhere to this back in the day. I mean, when you went out, were you able to stick to it when you went out to eat back
Oh yeah.
then?
Oh
Yeah.
yeah,
What did you,
yeah.
they had
Yeah, I
vegan
mean,
options?
well, you live in Austin, and so I would go to Chewy's and I would get the big as your face burrito, and I would just have them do rice and beans and all the vegetables that they could throw in there. There was a restaurant called Threadgill's,
Yeah.
and I would get I think it's called the orgy platter, where it was nine. The chef would give you nine different vegetables. You didn't have a decision, but nine different vegetables, right?
Oh, wow.
Including, beans. There was Mr. Natural was here. There's, you can make just about any pizza place work. You just get veggies, you don't get cheese, and I usually get extra sauce. Yeah, so I was able to make it work, and then eating at home, yeah, it was just a lot of different. I mean, let's breakfast is always a slam dunk. It's just oatmeal or a clean cereal with fruit on top, and then some sort of a plant-based milk.
Yeah.
Lunches typically for me back then, as I was training so much, they were typically several sandwiches. So I would, whole grain bread with hummus, and then all kinds of green leafies on top, sliced tomatoes, bell pepper, of course, avocado. I had to do everything I could to maintain my weight back then of about 165 pounds.
Man.
And I'm about 6'2" as well. And then dinner was usually a big salad, and then, pasta or some sort of a casserole. Rice and beans has been a dish that, I've had since then. I have it probably at least once a week, some sort of a rice and beans extravaganza. Love lentils, sloppy joes. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. And then of course another side of the story is how I got a bunch of Texas male firefighters to do this as well. But yeah, so
Yeah.
I'll stop there with the triathlons for now.
Well, I mean, I guess you kind of credit your diet to your success as a triathlete? Part of it. I mean, obviously.
Yeah. Well. Listen. I mean, so I swam for 4 years at the University of Texas at Austin. Before that, I swam as an age grouper since about the age of 8. And so I had a very strong swimming background going into the sport of triathlon. And within 1 year of doing triathlons and learning how to really navigate in the open water, because triathlons, it's an open water swim. You're not in a pool.
That's
So
scary.
you're in the ocean or a lake or, a river or something like that, which I ended up adoring. I loved the fact that you had to use your sighting. You had to navigate around, buoys. You had to figure out, do I want to go out hard so I'm not, bumping up against, people the whole time. And then the pacing, when you don't have a pace clock and you don't have walls and turns, it's a whole nother dynamic. But I ended up being really good at it. And so I became like really one of the top 2 or 3 swimmers in the sport of triathlon after about a year. And then I was always a good, decent biker. Running, because I was such a swimmer and I had a bigger upper body, I could run well, but I wasn't a gazelle like some of these other runners. So I would usually come off the bike first, and then I'd just be kind of running to save my life to, try and get in the prize money. So, but yes, the food definitely, it helped tremendously as far as my recovery, as far as, I very, very rarely got sick. As I talked about, I never had to worry about my weight. I was always lean and mean. The other thing that we're learning more and more, and I didn't know this at the time, but, green leafies are fantastic for opening up and dilating your blood vessels. Yes. And so the more that the more green leafies that you can eat, and this was especially true with my father's heart patients, the better off that you'll be at kind of restoring your vessel's ability through their production of nitric oxide through the endothelial cells to produce this magic gas, nitric oxide, that basically allows your vessels to dilate, become youthful, elasticized. The inside is like Teflon instead of like Velcro. And all that helps when you're trying to get oxygen to working muscles as a triathlete, whether it's, primarily your upper body when you're swimming, your legs when you're biking, and then kind of a combination of everything when you're running.
Mhm.
So the food was absolutely of paramount importance, but it was just kind of like, the icing on the kale.
Right. Exactly. And then, I want to talk more about nitric oxide in just a minute, but you did bring up your the engine too, and I think that's what you're very well known for. That
Yeah.
do you want to tell that story just really quickly about how that all went down?
Yeah. No, I love telling this story. And I'll give you kind of the Reader's Digest version. But
Yeah.
after my career in triathlons at the age of 33 and a half, I've been doing this since I was about 23. So almost a decade of gallivanting around the world, competing in triathlons. I was like, okay, it's time for me to, get more of a real job. And firefighting fit the bill perfectly. No two shifts are ever the same. For the most part, it's a bunch of guys. There's not many women in the fire department, and I never had the privilege of working with women. It was always men. But so it was kind of like this fraternity, and it was this wonderful bonding experience when you're, rescuing people and doing good deeds, and then coming back to the firehouse and cooking meals. But it just so happened that in 2003, one of my firefighting buddies had a total cholesterol of 344 at the age of 33. And so I said, hey, JR, look at my father's research and going back to 1984. Look what I've been able to do. And I was now in my 40s, and I was still coming out of the water first on CBS on the Xterra World Championships. Look what I've been able to do. And, don't let your manhood get in the way of you eating intelligently and in a way that's going to save your heart. Because right now, you are a liability waiting to happen. And his father had triple bypass at the age of 49, and both of his grandfather and his great grandfather died of heart attacks before the age of 50. So JR was on board. All the other guys got on board as well, kind of an act of solidarity. And so we started eating this way, and it became a thing. I mean, we were the Plant Strong studs from Station 2. We got all kinds of publicity. Jimmy John's named a really healthy sandwich after us. The New York Times did a full-blown article in the Metro section about us. The Austin American Statesman did. NPR did a broadcast around Thanksgiving time about us, and it was amazing. And so, from 2003 and until 2009, when I retired, Fire Station 2 on the C shift at 506 West MLK on 506 West MLK Boulevard became the Plant Strong crew.
Man, so did everybody lose weight and get healthy?
Everybody lost weight. Everybody got healthier. Everybody's lipid panel went down. JR, so I challenged him to do it for 28 days. And so he did it for 28 days. He lost 14 pounds. His cholesterol came down from 344 to 198.
Whoa.
So it's a drop of like, what was that? 100 and almost 150.
I can't do
150 points. It's substantial. And then, of course, he felt better. His acid reflux went away. He was sleeping better. Just a kind of a confluence of things that happens when you really embrace this lifestyle.
Who did you start doing publicity? Like, were you sending this story out? How did word get out?
No. So originally what happened, the thing that kind of got the ball rolling. Have you ever been to a place here in Austin called Casa de Luz?
Have I been there? Yeah.
Okay.
Every week.
Yeah. So Casa de Luz, for those of you that don't know, it's a very, very famous vegan restaurant. It's macrobiotic, but it's also vegan here in Austin.
And oil-free.
Yeah. And it's been around for a long, long time. But I back then, before I had three kids, I would eat there at least twice a week. It was basically all you could eat. Back then, it was all you could eat, and it
Wow.
was like $6, right?
It's
So
16 now. It's really stayed pretty
yeah,
good for all those
but
years.
it also isn't all you can eat now. You
It is
basically
not
get
all you can
one
eat.
serving. Yes,
Yeah,
but
but it's plenty.
it's awesome. And so I was walking out, and I ran into a woman named Claire Osborne, who was a writer for the Austin American Statesman, who I knew from the Hills Fitness Center, where we both were members. And I go, Claire, I didn't know that you were like, vegan. And she's like, I'm not, but she's like, when I occasionally I try and, eat healthy. And so I come here. I go, well, good for you. And she's like, how long you been doing this, Rip, like eating this way? And I told her, and she said, how do you do it at the firehouse? And I said, well, it's kind of remarkable. Like what's happened is, and then I told her about JR and how we've embraced this since 2003. Whenever we're at work, we eat this way, and we rotate who shops for the food. And then we all kind of chip in and we help cook and then, and help clean. And she's like, that's a really cool story. Let me talk to my boss and see if that's an article that I could write. And she
Good
got
job,
back to me.
Claire.
And she got back to me like 6 months later. And
6 months? Oh, she was in no hurry.
She wasn't in a hurry, and I didn't think much of it. And so 6 months later, she wrote that first article. It was called "Tofu Outmuscles Beef at Fire Station 2." And literally, that's what started the ball rolling. And then from there, it was NPR. Then it was the New York Times. It was documentaries. It was Forks Over Knives. It was crazy.
Isn't that just amazing how your path just unfolds because of one, thing like that? I mean, it probably would have anyway in a way, but it's just remarkable how one
Well,
thing like that.
yeah, and it couldn't have, I think about it and how fortunate I am that, I was at the fire station that I came to Austin to go to school, that I
Yeah.
decided to stay here. I mean, everything just kind of, all the dots connected, and allowed me to have this very, very passionate thing that I wake up every day super excited to continue to spread the message of health and wellness.
That's I know, that's incredible. It's so beautiful that you get to do what you are good at and what you love. So how old are you? You're what, 62, is that right?
I'm 62.
All right. And so what do you attribute? I mean, well, obviously it's going to be your diet, but I guess you probably are not suffering from a lot of the conditions that other men your age are, heart disease and type 2 diabetes and weight gain and erectile dysfunction because of the way you eat and the way you exercise and the way you live. We talked a little bit about nitric oxide.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that, and especially around erectile dysfunction? I think that that's
I,
an
I,
important thing.
I'd be happy to. And I can tell you that you're right. I mean, a lot of people, they get into their 50s, their 60s, 70s, and they have had a shot across the bow with one or several chronic Western diseases, insulin resistance, the precursors of heart disease, difficulty breathing, angina, you name it, cancer. And I can definitively tell you that it is because of my lifestyle that I'm not on one medication, and that I am disease free. I, in no way, shape, or form, have the makings of any kind of erectile dysfunction. And
Your dad calls that the canary in the coal mine because,
yeah,
that signals that you don't have good blood flow. You might have heart disease, right?
yeah. No, and yes, and I'd love to talk about that here in just a second. But I just, for all your listeners, to me, it's all about consistency. you don't have to be perfect, but you want to be consistent. So you want to be consistently consistent. And I've been consistently consistent really since I was 24 years old. That has allowed me to, you know, um, go out and play with my 3 kids whenever I want, however hard I want. I swim 5 mornings a week. I play pickleball usually 4 days a week, singles, doubles, you name it. In 2019, I set the world record for men age 55 to 59 in the 200 meter backstroke. And so physically, I feel like I have reaped all the benefits of staying in motion and staying plant strong. Now, just to take this a step further, because, we've talked about my parents. So they've been doing this 3 years longer than I have. My dad will be 92 in December. My mom turned 90 in July. And again, I mean, these are individuals that are not on any medications. They're in their 90s and they are living life large, large. No dementia. They have all their, faculties about them. Very, active. And, my father is still at 90, almost 92. He's the director of the Cardiovascular Disease Prevention and Reversal Program at the Cleveland Clinic Wellness Institute. So he is still, counseling patients on the phone. He doesn't go, into the office anymore.
That's incredible.
Right? And then my mom, I was home over summer and we were playing pickleball. She either does yoga or lift weights or does something, typically an hour.
She's incredible.
Every day. I mean,
I think people have seen that video of her schlepping that tire tied around her waist up the hill. I mean, she's unbelievable.
Yeah.
She
is. So I say that because, they really, to me, epitomize what this lifestyle can do for you. And then I'll also say this, and, people are always say, and maybe Jane talked to you about this when Jane and my mom were on your podcast, but, people say, oh, God, what I would give to have your genes. And what they don't realize is that we have absolutely horrendous genes. I told you about my grandfather that died at 72. My father's sister died in her late 50s of ovarian cancer. My mom's brother died of pancreatic cancer at 62. My mom's sister, one of her sisters, died at 60 of a glioblastoma brain cancer. And then my mom's mother died of breast cancer at 55. Her father died of a combination of lung cancer and pancreatic cancer at 82. And so, literally, I asked them the other day, do you know of anybody on the Esselstyn or Kreil side of the family trees that have lived as long as you guys have? And they couldn't think of anyone. So, I mean, that just goes to show you really, to me, how diet trumps DNA all day long, right?
Yeah.
Diet
that's a really good point.
And lifestyle. Yeah. So let's get back to your earlier point about the canary in the coal mine, which is erectile dysfunction. I had Dr. Robert Ostfeld on the podcast. Do you know who he is?
Yeah.
He's preventive cardiologist at Montefiore in the Bronx in New York. And he said, Rip, the standard American diet is the starter kit for erectile dysfunction.
Oh, that's such a good one.
Isn't that good?
Yeah.
So, and it is. It's the starter kit for ED. And I would say, and I think he would tell you that 80% of erectile dysfunction is not psychological, it's physiological, right? And so, just to kind of refresh everyone's memories, we all have arteries going. So we have, the carotid artery that goes up to our brain. We have the coronary arteries that go to our heart. We have the peripheral arteries that go down into our legs. And then, of course, we have the penile artery. And most of those arteries are 5 millimeters in diameter. That's like the size of this pen here, right?
Like a pen. Mm-hmm.
And then, but the artery to the penis is actually 1.5. So it's like 1/5 the size of this. And so which artery do you think is going to, basically gunk up first and foremost before all the others? And it's the penile artery. And so that's why it's called the canary in the coal mine. It's the first one that basically exhibits, difficulty. And so here's the wonderful thing about eating whole food, plant-based, and all those servings of green leafies. So we talked earlier about nitric oxide and how nitric oxide is basically that's that magic molecule that's produced from your endothelial cells when you're basically eating a lot of...
That's the lining of your arteries.
Yep. 65,000 miles of our different basically vessels, right? Arteries, veins, capillaries, 65,000 miles.
Wow.
And so, and I'll just take a step back. I will also tell you that typically if you have blockage in one place, it's systemic. You don't just have it one place. So that's something to think about. What we want is we want our endothelial cells to be just firing out nitric oxide. And what part of the body do you think has more endothelial cells per square inch than any other part of the body?
I mean, you want me to guess? I don't know. Are you going to tell me that penile artery?
Yes.
I don't know.
Yes, it's the male eggplant, right? That's where you have more endothelial cells. And so it's one of the reasons too why, most of the patients that my father was seeing had erectile dysfunction. And most, if not all of them, were able to start having sex again. And I mean, imagine that. You basically, you weren't able to raise the flag for years. And now all of a sudden, after a couple months, there's a party going on downstairs. That's exciting.
Yeah. That's got to be a reason to stick with it. I mean, they were probably like, damn, this thing really works now.
No,
I mean,
yeah. Oh yeah. No, my father has some great stories around that, but yeah. I mean, you're feeling.
I mean, if that's not a thing for the engine too, for the firehouse, when people are like, oh, real men eat meat. Well, real men, get strong erections with a plant-based diet. That's really the argument right there, right?
Well, what I would tell these guys and is, guys, I go, you all think that meat puts hair on your chest, but the fact of the matter is that meat is putting plaque in your arteries, including the artery in your penis. And so if you want to become more manly and you want that Puff the Magic Dragon to roar downstairs, you want to go Plant Strong.
Right. That drives the point home. I mean, really, I think that's good. I appreciate you talking about it because we really haven't talked. We talk about menopause. We just really haven't talked a lot about that. And, for women who are listening, who have male partners and having a tough time convincing them to go plant-based, that's a good argument, something to talk about.
Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah. So you've just had so many guests that are incredible. Who's your favorite guest? And I'll tell you who my favorite guest of yours is. Do you have one or somebody really memorable?
You mean on the podcast?
On the Plant Strong podcast, who have you loved talking to?
Oh, there have been a lot of wonderful guests that I've had, and I've been doing it since 2019. So
I know.
Had well over 320 guests now. But I would say, Tracy and Jon Stewart
That's
were,
my favorite. That's who I was going to say.
yeah, yeah. And,
Tracy and Jon
yeah,
Stewart.
well,
Yep.
Tracy's so down to earth, and then John is just so darn funny, right?
Oh my
And just kind
gosh.
of calls it like it is, using his sense of humor. So they were wonderful. Moby, I really valued the conversation I had with Moby.
Yeah.
He is just so in it to win it for the animals. And,
Yeah.
if you haven't seen, he's got two tattooed sleeves. On one arm, it says animal, and then the other arm, it says rights.
Wow.
And so he's all in there. Richard, you know who Richard Marx is? He's
Yeah.
So
I
Richard
did. I
Marx,
heard that that one's been a while, right? Because I
that's been a
believe I
while,
heard that one.
but
Yeah.
the probably produced more number one hit singles than any other musician out there, and I really loved his story and how honest he was as well, sharing his story. You know, God, I had Tony Robbins on talking, when he wrote his book.
That's
Tony's
incredible.
Tony's he's a force, no
He
doubt
is a
about it.
force. Were you
Yeah.
able to? I don't. I'm sure I listened to it, but that one's probably been a while too, right?
Yeah. Oh,
Has
yeah.
it
Oh,
been a
yeah. Yeah.
while?
No,
And
he
were
knew
you able to ask him questions, or was he
yeah,
just
no, listen, Tony knew what he wanted to say, and he wasn't
right?
gonna, but I was able to jump in and, ask some questions and make some points, but, he definitely is a man who gets his way.
Yeah, he is a force, like you
Yeah.
said.
Yeah. And then, I've had some really wonderful conversations with my father, with Ann and Jane, with Adam Sudd has turned into such
Yes,
a
he's incredible.
remarkable mouthpiece for for this
Yeah,
for this
Adam has an
movement and for the
incredible
science
story.
and everything.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah.
I always love when you have your parents on too. And I loved hearing your dad tell about when he won the gold medal. I
Oh
mean, in
yeah,
the Olympics, I mean, what an incredible story. And I loved
yeah.
hearing him tell it. That was remarkable.
Well,
But
I appreciate you listening to so many of the episodes.
oh, I've been listening since you started. Are you kidding? I love your podcast. And that when you said John and Tracy Stewart, that was my favorite because I love John Stewart. I've always loved him. And as a matter of fact, when I think I heard that I don't remember how I heard Tracy. I knew that they had the animal sanctuary and I knew she was really, I
Yeah.
knew she was a vegan, but then I heard that she just showed up at like your mom and sister's cooking thing at the house or wherever. Is that right? That she
No,
just,
that's not. It's not
that's not
quite
what
right.
happened? What
No,
happened?
what happened is she came to one of our 6-day Plant Strong retreats in Black
Oh,
Mountain, North Carolina.
so she came on your retreat.
Yeah, so she came to one of our
Okay.
retreats, and and it wasn't until the very last day that she told Jane's husband, Brian Hart, uh, who she
Who
was,
she was.
because she actually really, by the 6th day, I think she just was letting her. Well, nobody knew who she was, but she just decided, I think, that, I want to help. And I am such an admirer of this lifestyle. And so, we have the Esselstyn Foundation that promotes free this material and lectures and information for free for just kind of populations that otherwise wouldn't hear this message. And so she wanted to get involved.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
incredible. I loved, I think I remember listening to that podcast and then running into my husband going, Jon Stewart is whole food plant based. He's like, okay, what do you want me to do about it? And I was like, I think it's one of those things when, somebody you admire and you love is eating the way that you do. You're like, oh my God. But the thing I loved most about that interview and that I'll never forget is I feel like she manifested meeting Jon Stewart. Like she really wanted to meet him and then she did. It was incredible. I love that story. self-explanatory. People
Yeah.
should go back and listen to that one,
Yeah.
to all of them. But okay, I'm just going to ask you some quick questions. Is that okay? Um,
Absolutely.
okay, I hope it's okay that I start off asking this one because it's really more probably something I should ask your dad, but I'll just ask you if you would speak on his behalf because people are asking me to ask you this one. Where do you stand on like nuts and tofu for heart patients, people who have had heart disease?
Well, you know where my father stands on that. My
Yeah,
father
yeah.
is he's not a fan of the nuts,
Or
you know,
avocado.
or avocado. Got to really, he wants you to minimize the tofu just because it's 40% fat, and he's kind of adamant that you want to get your total fat intake to about 10%.
Damn it.
Right,
I
10% of
wanted you to not say that, but
10% of
okay.
total calories. Yeah, and so I mean, I think that the reality is that if you're going to have a handful of walnuts, and he's not going to say that out loud, but if you were to have a handful of walnuts a day, that would probably be absolutely fine. But the reason why he doesn't say that is because he knows that people cannot moderate
Yeah.
their nut intake.
Right.
And if he says, yeah, you can have, you know, a small handful of walnuts a day, some people hear, oh, he's okay with nuts. So
Right.
he is drawn a hard line in the pavement with this. And you can't argue with the success that he's had
Yes.
with these patients. So
Right.
and then you look at, I mean, between him and Ornish, I mean, they've really shown the world that this is a disease that can be prevented and reversed
Yeah.
through the right, you know, dietary and lifestyle interventions.
And does your dad believe in like a statin for people who have like high LP little a and really do this diet and can't get their cholesterol down?
So I'm going to answer that two ways. So first is, you know, some of his most remarkable results happened before the advent of statin drugs,
Mm.
right? And the, I don't know if this rings a bell to you, but you know, he had that one fellow breast surgeon that at the age of 43, Joe Crow,
Yeah.
he fell over, had a massive heart attack. They brought him back to life. He basically had a, you know, major blockage in his left anterior descending artery, and but he they had statins then, but I think he was allergic to statins, and so and it was located. The blockage was located in a location in the left anterior descending artery where he was not a candidate for any kind of a stent or intervention. So he just followed my father's program to the T, and literally 2 years later, that thing is as clean as a whistle. That
That's
left anterior
incredible.
descending artery. So pretty darn remarkable. So my father gets results, and it's hard to argue with that. And he's been published, as you know, in 7 different peer-reviewed medical literature.
Yep. I've read all of them.
So it's, yeah. So I mean, it's the real deal. And another study I'll point out is in the Journal of Family Practice in 2014. You know, he had 198 patients that he followed up on to see how they were doing 3.8 years later. And 3.8 years later, there were 21 people that had not stayed with the program. Of those 21, 62% had either had another coronary event or had died.
Yes.
62% of those 21. Of the remaining 179, if I'm doing my math
I
correctly,
think that's right.
yeah, 179, there was one gentleman that had a small stroke, and that's it. So basically, if you're compliant, you never have to worry about having another heart attack or any kind of cardiovascular disease again.
Right.
There's nothing that can touch that's out there in the medical literature.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I actually use that study when I give talks. That's one of my slides, that study. So
Yeah,
it's incredible because he had almost 200 people in that study.
198. Yeah.
Yeah. What's your favorite guilty pleasure?
I would say right now it is dates with peanut butter inside. So I take a
Oh,
date, take out the pit, slice it open, put a little bit of peanut butter inside, and that's it. It's like a healthy Reese's peanut butter cup.
all right. What's your biggest pet peeve?
Hmm. I think now more and more it's people that are late
Oh, yeah.
because,
I can.
the older I get, the more I just think that one of the most valuable commodities we have on this planet is our time.
Time. That's my love language is time. Like, don't give me presents. Don't just spend time with me if
Yeah. No,
that's my favorite thing.
it,
Do you,
absolutely. And one of my favorite things in the world now is being able to have one. I mean, I love group time with my family, but when I get to have one-on-one time with one of my daughters or my son or even my wife, it's delicious.
yeah, there's nothing like it.
Yeah.
I agree. Um, do you like to read? Or are
Well,
you a reader or
I
listen
I
to
I,
books
I
or,
am not a voracious reader, but with the podcast, I do
oh,
everything I
you into,
can to try and read everybody's book. So, and I read so much during the day with emails and stuff like that.
yeah, yeah,
That
yeah.
typically, I'm not. Uh, I don't read as much as my wife or my
Mm,
daughter.
yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite streaming show or TV show as of late or movie?
Well, it's interesting. I just got done watching Black Rabbit.
Oh,
It,
wait, Jackrabbit? No,
No, black. I think it's
Black
called
Rabbit.
Black Rabbit. It's
Wait,
with
is that the
it's
one with Jude Law?
yes,
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. Very
Watched the first episode. Is
yeah,
it good?
very Ozarkian in some way,
Yeah. It
and
also has Jason Bateman in it. That's
Jason
why.
Bateman, who's amazing. Yeah, so
He's great.
that's the last thing I watched. But I can tell you that frankly, um, I've been trying not to do the Netflix binging because I find that ultimately it's a time suck, and
Uh-huh.
I go back 3 months later and I can't even remember what I watched. I just know it was like mind candy for however long it lasted.
Yeah, for sure. So what's your, well, either a best piece of advice for aging well or just a best piece of advice in general?
Hmm. Well, I think it ultimately is attitude. I think attitude is everything, everything. And I look no farther than my mother, Anne, as that's one of the greatest gifts that she has given all of her children. Yeah, Essie is so steady and methodical and just kind of level-headed, and then Anne is just all spirit and spunk and great attitude and optimistic. So I think a great attitude and being optimistic and just being super grateful for for this opportunity that we each have to be on this planet and try and do good things.
Yeah. And do you have a favorite health or beauty product? The
I,
guys never
I
have.
I
What?
do.
What? Okay, tell me.
I do actually. And this is a very, very shameless plug for the Plant Strong products that truly represent something that is sorely lacking in the CPG space, the consumer product goods space. And it's basically food that is convenient and halfway homemade, that is delicious and made from whole, real, simple ingredients. It's
Yeah.
not going to bankrupt your health. It's going to absolutely pick up your health.
Yeah, and I've had that you have granola and you have pizza crusts and you have burgers and
Oh
soups
my
and
God.
stews and
Soups and
yeah,
stews and
pancake mix. It's
cereals and
fantastic.
cornbread and muffin mixes
Yep.
and milks, Plant Strong milks
Yes.
that are
Mhm.
uber clean.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're super. Yeah, 10 different chilies and stews, and everything's available. We'll drop ship it right to your door, or you can go to Whole Foods and get the chilies and stews or the milks.
Yeah, I
But
saw that.
yeah, but if you want
Yeah.
the whole variety, you have to go online to plantstrong.com.
Okay, those are good health and beauty products. What's your favorite concert you've ever been to?
Oh my
Do you like
gosh.
concerts?
South Park Meadows, 1983. It was the Police.
Oh, I went to that. Actually, the 1983, that was the Synchronicity tour. That was my husband and I's first date. We went to that concert. Not South Park Meadows. We were in Houston.
Wow.
But
But you're right. It
yeah.
was the Synchronicity tour.
I remember that.
And the warm-up band was UB40.
Yes. Oh
Yeah.
my gosh, I forgot about that. That was incredible.
And Sting, I've always loved Sting. And he came out in this blue smock that went from basically, his neck all the way down to like his ankles, and it had all splatters of paint on it. And then he was wearing like combat boots. And so it was such a cool getup, right? And it got really cold, and it was a full moon, and the clouds were kind of moving in the sky. And when he sang, that one song about the moon, oh my God.
Walking on the Moon.
Walking on the Moon. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
He's incredible. Actually, I just saw him last year in Australia. He looks I turned to my husband and I was like, I didn't know I could be hot for like a 70 whatever old year. I was like, he looks so good. And then he's incredible. Do you ever go listen to like live music here in Austin? Just little bands that
I would go to ACL up until about again, once we had kids, that all kind of came to a stop. It just I think we'd rather be home just hanging out together as opposed to, getting in the car, fighting traffic, and
the people, the traffic.
Yeah. But otherwise, I would love to go just, relax and listen to music. It just seems like the effort to make that happen right now doesn't meet the payoff.
Yeah. So. There's a lot of good little venues here that it's not that big of a stretch. It's easy. Well, Rip, thank you so much for sharing. You've been a great guest. I had no doubt. Thank you so much.
Well, Lauren, I love your infectious energy and all of your kind of like spur of the moment, kind of just very, very out of the box questions. It's very refreshing.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Well, thanks for stopping by.
Hey,
take care.
See you at Casa de Luz.
Oh, see you at Casa de Luz. And what do you say at the end? Stay plant strong. Oh,
keep it plant strong.
Keep it plant strong. Boom. Take care. Thanks for listening, friend. From my heart to yours, be well until we meet again.